A Coppe UFRJ tem a honra de receber o professor Jim Kurose, da University of Massachusetts Amherst, que proferirá a aula inaugural da Coppe do ano de 2021.
Kurose é um professor da Universidade de Massachusetts em Amherst, é um professor de ciência da computação, e ele tem uma função administrativa que iniciou há pouco tempo, que é Associate Chancellor para Partnerships and Innovation, e é um pouco sobre isso que ele vai falar hoje, em particular sobre um grupo que vem estudando o Flexible Learning, né, que é essas formas de aprendizado virtual. Jim Kurose é fellow do I3E, fellow da ACM. Ele tirou o seu doutorado em ciência da computação pela Columbia University, mas já trabalhou como professor e pesquisador visitante em outras universidades, como Sorbonne e IBM Research, né? Ele recebeu vários prêmios, Infocom Award, ACM SIGCOM Lifetime Award, ACM SIGCOM Test of Time Award, IEEE Computer Society Taylor Booth Education Method e outros. Ele escreveu um best-seller na área de ciência da computação, em particular na área de redes de computadores, que é o Computer Network, a Top-Down Approach, que acho que já está na 9ª edição, alguma coisa parecida por aí. Ele é membro da National Academy of Engineering, fellow da ACM do I3E, eu já falei. De 2015 a 2019, ele foi Assistant Director da US National Science Foundation, que é a NSF americana, é uma das principais agências de fomento à pesquisa nos Estados Unidos. E lá ele conduziu a diretoria de Computer Information Science and Engineering. E ele também trabalhou no Office of Science and Technology Policy para Casa Blanca, se eu não me engano. Eu vou passar para o inglês agora e passar a palavra ao professor Jim Kurose. Jim, finally, the audience is all yours. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Okay, thank you very much. Obrigado, Marcelo. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry. I speak French, I speak a little bit of Spanish, but I don't speak any Portuguese. And so I wish I could give a presentation in Portuguese, but maybe sometime in the future. But I'm really very honored to be able to speak to all of you. And I want to say a special welcome. I know there are a lot of students who are listening to this streaming via YouTube. So I want to say a special hi to all of you. You know, I think all of us are in universities because we love teaching and we love students. And I can tell you, I've visited UFRJ and Coppe maybe 10 times. I've given talks. Actually, I taught a class there. I've given research talks there. You're coming to a fabulous school and you'll get a great education. I mean, the faculty that you're going to get a chance to meet and work with and learn from at UFRJ and Coppe are just really, among the best in the world. And I hope to get down there at some point in the next year or two. I mean, again, I've been many times. I come every year or every other year. When I was working with the National Science Foundation, it was my privilege to be able to start up joint research programs between the United States and Brazil through CNPq. And so I very much look forward to continued collaboration. But unfortunately, this is going to be, I'm sitting here in my house in Massachusetts. In the United States, we're still working from home. I'm teaching from home. And so this is a talk being delivered from home. But I wanted to say hi to everybody, to thank you again for inviting me, and a special hello to all the students who are going to be starting their graduate school in particular coming up. Okay, so Marcello, is it okay if can I share my screen for some PowerPoint?
By all means, yes.
Okay. So there's that. There's that. And can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So this is actually not a technical talk, but for those of you who are students, I think you'll find it pretty interesting nonetheless. This is about teaching and learning at a distance, something that we've all, some of us, I've worked in this area and taught at a distance for actually 20 years, but for many of us, it's a new experience. I think one of the things you'll see, because I'll talk about some of the activities going on at my college, I know some of the activities going on at UFRJ, you'll see how much, the professors think carefully about how we ought to be doing teaching and learning in this time of the pandemic, and also what comes next. So here's what I'd like to talk about. So I'm a computer scientist. I have an undergraduate degree in physics, but I got interested in computer science in graduate school. And I want to talk about computing. I want to start by setting some context for computing and engineering education. I then want to talk about teaching and learning at a distance, some reflections on that. And that might help all of you who are students sort of think about what it's going to be like to be in a classroom at a distance next semester. And then talk about a particular project that we've launched at the University of Massachusetts called Flexible Learning that I've been involved with. So let me start off by, I'm sorry to be giving you such a US-centric view of the world here, so my apologies for that. So the data that I'm going to show you is from the United States. But one of the things certainly that all students think about and all faculty think about when we teach are, we're educating the next generation of researchers and of workers in the economy. So you might ask yourself, where are the STEM jobs? Where are future STEM jobs going to be? STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And so the graph you see over here on the left is a graph from the US Bureau of Labor Statistics. And it looks at where are the new jobs in STEM. So that's all of the physical and the life science, mathematics, engineering, computer science, the things that go on in Coppe. Where are the new jobs in the economy going to be coming from over the next 10 years or over a 10-year time frame? You can see between computer science and engineering, that's about 77% of the new jobs that are STEM jobs, science, technology, engineering, mathematics jobs in the United States. So the education that happens in computer science and engineering, again, I'm a computer scientist, so I'm sorry if I think that computing and engineering is sort of at the center of the world, but the education here is going to be really, really important for the workforce. If you look at, and again, these are United States statistics actually for graduate programs that have graduate programs, universities that have graduate programs, you can see over time on the x-axis you have years, on the y-axis you have the number of degrees in computer science, and you can see that the number of degrees in computer science at the undergraduate level has been going up very, very fast. That's been a real challenge for universities. In my university, so this is a picture of my campus. My building is sort of right in the middle, but at the back there, so you can't really see it. Computer science graduates the largest number of undergraduate students who study the computer science major. The number of master's students is also the largest on campus, and the number of PhD students that we graduate is also the largest on our campus. So certainly, again, computing plays a very important role on my campus as well. Now, I wanted to put in just sort of a couple of slides here about the bigger picture about computing education, because I know many of you, if you're coming to UFRJ and Coppe and going to study computer science, you're going to be involved in the deeply technical part of computer science and engineering. In the United States, there's a trend at the undergraduate level, in particular, for computer science education to be broader than, or to be more than just this, sort of the narrow, I don't mean that in a negative sense, but the focused, that's a better word, the focused undergraduate technical area of computing. There's something that in the US we're calling computer science plus X, where X is a variable here. And what this means is that we have undergraduate students who are studying computing, but they're also studying business, they're studying health, humanities, art, social sciences, some of the other physical or life sciences here. So in my university, we started a program that we call informatics that is a different program from what we're doing in computing. And so as you come to the university, just something to keep in mind that yes, the deeply technical computing that you will study, that you will do at UFRJ is incredibly important. But computing is important to lots of other people as well who are studying in other disciplines, and not just the science disciplines, the social sciences, for example, particularly psychology, cognitive science, anthropology, for example, because a lot of the artifacts that we create as engineers, as computer scientists, need to be used by people. And the application of computing, the application of engineering is itself becoming more and more important. So I hope you get a chance to interact on your campus next semester or virtually interact next semester. And then when you get back to campus physically, you get a chance to interact with students in other disciplines as well. And then lastly, here in the United States, we have an increasing emphasis on what we call K through 12. So those are the first 12 years of school, maybe roughly 6 years old to 18 years old. Also, and this is taking sort of a computing view here. And in the United States, actually, I don't know what it's like actually in Brazil. In the United States, we have the kinds of students studying computer science are not that diverse. There are not nearly as many women as there are men in computer science programs, and from underrepresented groups, Latino students, also African-American students, they're underrepresented. And what's being shown here, just some activities that I've been involved with while I was at the National Science Foundation and before, showing sort of the results. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but showing the increase on the left-hand side in women who are participating in, these are actually taking specific exams in high school in computer science, and also the underrepresented racial and ethnic groups in the United States. So real effort to diversifying computer science education in the United States, and some very promising results here too. Okay, so I want to say a few words about teaching and learning at a distance, since we'll all be experiencing it this semester. And then maybe before I talk about what's going on at UMass, I'll pause and see if there are maybe any questions from the folks who are directly online here via Zoom. So here's the question, right? So if you start on the left-hand side, up until a year ago, primarily, you come to UFRJ, you come to UMass, you sit in classrooms, you interact with you interact with the professors and other students. You do it in a classroom, you're face to face. For the last year, when I taught last semester, 100% online and virtual. So I've never met the 150 students who were in my computer networking class, right? They were all, just like you're seeing here, was all done online. And in between, there are models of teaching and learning called blended sometimes, and or hybrid, where we try to mix face-to-face instruction with online instruction. So certainly as a result of COVID, we in the States, I know you folks in Brazil, have moved completely from face-to-face to virtual. And the question I want to ask is, we will, hopefully, COVID, we will get past this. And when we're past this for your education, what will education look like? Will we go back to 100% face-to-face, or will we go somewhere in between, some mixture of face-to-face and virtual, right? And there's a French word, déjà vu, means, we've seen this before. And there have been discussions in the past about online learning a lot, and some amazing things. I know I've worked with Edmundo on some of these online activities in Brazil. So the question is, well, have we seen this before, or it sort of came and went, or is this something that's here here to stay. And I want to make the argument here. You'll see I'm a big believer in that things this is going to be, I think, going to be a real change, that we're not going to go back to completely business as usual with face-to-face. And so why? Well, first of all, we have on-campus students. I'll speak for my students here at the University of Massachusetts. We have programs called internships, international study. So a lot of our students work, they hold a job while they're going to campus. Maybe they're home, they're taking care of their parents. They've got kids they need to take care of. And so students can't always be on campus. So our students who would normally be on campus sometimes need to go off campus for internships, to go work at a company for a semester, or to travel for an international experience, or for work, or for personal things. So that's becoming increasingly important. Many universities are now establishing satellite campuses. My university is. So I live in a very small town, 20,000 people. Boston is the big town. It's maybe 2 hours away, 150 kilometers away from me. And we're starting a campus in Boston. So we will do some teaching to students who are actually not physically in our little town here, but are physically in Boston. So remote campuses. You're all coming to graduate school. Those of you who are students are coming to graduate school. Increasingly being able to learn throughout your life. I will guarantee you that what you learn at UFRJ next semester, that'll be a great start, right? But you're going to have to keep learning, right? You're gonna, you might be working in other parts of Brazil. You may not have access to a university there, but you're going to want to continue to take courses. I'm a networking person. I would love to keep taking networking courses from Edmundo and Daniel and other people at UFRJ, as I go through my career. So you're going to have lifelong learning. I'm going to say a word about demographics. I'm not sure what the demographics are, in terms of what's the age distribution of people who are coming to universities, but I'm going to show you that in the United States and also in Korea in just a second. And then finally, there's just a lot of increasing demand for education, and in particular, as we saw, in the areas of computing and engineering. Okay, so let me show you some demographics. I mean, so as Marcello mentioned, I'm an administrator, and one of the things you do have to think about is, what's the macro picture of the makeup of students who are coming to your university? And maybe during, we'll pause for questions in a couple of minutes. I'd be interested in hearing about Brazil. But in the United States, so what I'm plotting here, so going up, as you go up on the x-axis, you see you're getting older and older and older. And the yellow is for males, and the blue is for females. And the width of the bar is the percentage of the population that's in that age group. So in 1980 in the United States, so when some of us were in college, for example, you can see that bulge right there in the middle. So I'm part of that bulge, right? And what it said was that in the 1980s, look at all of the college-age students that there were. By 2020, so last year, you can see that bulge has sort of disappeared, right? That it sort of smoothed out a little bit, and we have fewer college-age students now in the United States than we had in 1980, right? And so we have programs that grew to meet the demand in 1980. But we don't have the same number of 18 to 22-year-olds anymore. And this is the projection for 2040. You see it even more. So in the US, we have a bit of an aging population, and a population who's going to need to do lifelong learning. So you can see how this might tie into learning at a distance. Here's the picture in Korea, where it's even, this is pretty amazing, right? Look at the changing demographics in Korea from 1960 to 2010 to 2060 there, and you can see that they face the same kind of challenges, even more so that we face, and this is true. Something similar is true in Japan and some of the other Asian countries as well. So, my question is, Are we going to be face-to-face? Are we going to be virtual? Are we going to be something in between? And so for those of you who are faculty, here's a couple of books. Believe it or not, faculty get homework and have to read and keep up with things, believe it or not, for those of you who are students. These are two books that I found very provocative about how higher education, again, focused primarily in the United States, also in Europe, is going to be changing. And so Clayton Christensen, who's a faculty member at MIT, has written a couple of very provocative books that you might want to take a look at. And for those of us who work in engineering and computer science, innovation and disruption is the name of the game, right? And the question is, well, maybe we ought to look at our own business, not just the technology we produce, but our business of education, and think about, is it innovate or die? That's sort of a saying that people sometimes like to use. Okay, so I want to just show you 5 thoughts about what this increased emphasis on online education, teaching and learning is going to mean for university faculty, for staff, and for students. And then we'll pause, see if there are any questions, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what's going on at UMass. So for those of you who are faculty, you might appreciate that you're the person there in the center lecturing. You can't quite see this. I cut off the picture. The picture at the bottom is a picture from a famous French photographer. There's actually a clock that you can't see. That's where that little kid is looking, right? And you know what it's like being in a classroom and you're like, oh my God, how much longer till this class is over, right? So, that's not the kind of teaching that's going to cut it in the future. We're going to be moving from this kind of, lecture-based, there's a saying in English, sage on the stage. That means the smart person who's lecturing, to more interactive and active forms of learning in your classrooms. And I know at UFRJ that there are a lot of faculty that have already adopted this. So I think when you get back in person on campus, you'll see this in the classrooms, and hopefully you'll see it online as well. I think, something I wanted to talk about. So, as mentioned, I have a computer networking textbook that, I know if you take a computer networking course while you're at UFRJ, you'll use it. And I've taught with, I came in and gave a guest lecture to one of Edmundo's classes there. When you think about what books are now and what books will look like in just, I predict, 10 years, they're going to look very different. And that's going to have impact for us as faculty members, right? That I will tell you, so for me as a textbook author, I've spent a lot of time recording my own videos that accompany now the textbook. So they're pretty high quality, I like to think. I'm a decent teacher. I know how to edit video together. I know how to keep students' attention. And so I think I put together a set of videos that are now freely available on YouTube. Come to my homepage at UMass and you'll find a pointer to them. And there's online review questions, there are interactive problems that you can solve. And so a lot of the things that we have done as teachers historically, I think, the lecturing, the presentation of the material, that's going to start being done more and more through textbooks themselves, right? And just as an example, so this is a screenshot of a YouTube thumbnail for my course where I talk about the Border Gateway Protocol, right? And so I've got nice slides, I've got a book that goes along with it, I've got a video, there's me, teaching a 15-minute, 20-minute segment on the BGP protocol. On the right-hand side at the bottom, you sort of see, oh, here's some interactive problems. You want to solve a problem, try it out, instead of getting it as homework, just try it out online. Yep, you can do that too. So the question is, what does this mean? What does this mean that we as teachers now mean to do in the classroom? So some people will tell you, oh, this means that, teaching is going to be totally transformed. And I don't think it will, and it won't make teachers go away, but I think the challenge in teaching is going to now be less lecturing and sort of just pushing material, but rather how to personalize the learning experience for our students, right? So how to contextualize it, right? So how you learn about networking, for example, my area of research in Brazil, what the current contexts are, what the challenges are. Quite honestly, they are different. I mean, some of the technology is the same, but certainly as you move up, up the protocol stack, as we say, the challenges are a little bit different there. And so I think you'll see that the challenge for us as professors is going to be how to personalize this material for the students that we have in the classroom. In computer science, there's a saying, to make things go fast, you optimize for the common case. So inside an operating system, if there's a path of code that you use again and again and again, you make that really, really, really fast, right? We optimize for the common case. And that's what textbooks do, right? So, I've written a textbook, and it's used all around the world. Literally millions of students have used it in lots of different countries. And every country's different, right? And every student's different. And so, but it's just one textbook, right? So it's generic. Honestly, it's generic, right? And so faculty then have the job of how to contextualize that, how to personalize that for their students. Okay, so all of you next semester will be, all of you who are students and faculty, will be online next semester. I hope to be in person next semester. We'll see how things go. And a challenge that we have when we have a hybrid classroom, hybrid means mixed students who are on campus and off campus, is how do you create community? So I know maybe there are 600 or so of you who are going to be new students, and you're not going to be physically with the other students in your classroom. How do your faculty members, how does your teacher create a community among the students who are in the classroom if they're not going to be physically together? Well, there are techniques for this, online discussions. We could have breakout groups. You could do team-based learning virtually, meaning that you can still do projects with 5 different students collaborating. They just won't be together in person. You could do group projects or force students to interact with each other in projects. I did that in my networking course. I'd never done this before, right? So, computer network protocol is, this computer talking to this computer, and we write protocols. And so what I had students do, and I've always had students do, is to write some protocols. And they would write, sending side and a receiving side themselves, and their 2 sides would talk to each other. And what I made them do this semester was, oh, okay, well, you write a sending side and someone else will write the receiving side, and your code has to interact with each other. So I forced the students to come together. If you know something about networking, I also had them do a routing protocol where they had to share, they had to communicate with all the other students in the class. And we sort of ran a network at the application level of students' code who had to talk to each other. So I think there are ways of creating community inside a hybrid classroom. And I think that's going to be important. We do need to break down the barriers between on-campus and off-campus students. In the US, as I've mentioned before, we sort of have this dichotomy between students who are online and students who are present and students who are not physically present. And again, there's going to be a mix of this in the future. Our residential students tend to be 18 to 22-year-olds. I really hope when you students get back and you're able to be on campus again, what the English phrase is co-curricular learning. You see that over here. There's a lot of learning that happens outside the classroom. That's going to be really, really important. How do we translate that co-curricular learning, like the students you see, over here, just sort of chilling, hanging out, talking to each other, in this nice picture, they're all thinking about their studies, but it's not the only thing that happens. These co-curricular activities, how do they translate to students who are now also online? Who often tend to be working, they tend to be older. How do we help them with learning in class, even though they're off doing, they're doing other things. And then finally, then we're going to pause. I'll see. Oh, actually, I want to say one more thing, and then pause for any questions. You're all experiencing this. I mean, literally, as we talk here, the infrastructure, the digital delivery systems, the online resources. So this is a lecture, but the online teaching tools, they require bandwidth, they require computing, they require storage. that's important. And for us, I'll speak for my campus, this has been a major concern. How do we provide equal access to all of our students, the on-campus students and the off-campus students as well? How do they have equitable, fair, equivalent access to university facilities when they're off campus? And if you're an on-campus student, right, every on-campus student gets to walk into every classroom, right? So we say, oh, you're a student? Yes, you get to come into our classroom. You get to go to the student center. You get to go to the recreation center. What's the equivalent principle for off-campus students, right? We don't want to create a digital divide between students who have access to online resources and students who don't. In my college, we, during the pandemic, were able to give laptops out to students who didn't have access to laptops because that was so critical to do that. And so for the university as an institution, we're going to have to address this through student aid, student grants for technology if they can't afford that. So I'll close up here simply by saying, before I talk anything about my own institution, that in the networking community, we had a discussion last August that I think was very interesting. You see the URL right here. Edmundo and I and others really helped organize this workshop. I would say it was great. And it was just a bunch of, 250. I mean, normally, this is the fourth of these workshops. Normally, we have 25 people show up, but because it was online, because of COVID, we had 250 people show up. So it was amazing. And from all over the world to talk about and to share information about how they're teaching online for computer networking. And so here's a couple of papers that I wrote, or white papers that I contributed. One's with Edmundo, one's with Serge Fedida, a colleague of mine in France. And so we have white papers that came from all around the world. You can go to that website and read them, especially if you're an instructor in a systems area. I think you'll find it really interesting. What are the experiences and lessons that we've learned? What resources are available? So lots of people are putting their lectures online. How do you teach online? And what is this thing's going to look like after the pandemic? And here's just a picture of the places we had people participating in the workshop. So let me pause there. I think I've probably gone on for 25 minutes or so. Let me pause there and maybe just see if there are any questions, because those of you who are students and faculty know the worst thing that could happen is for someone to just start talking and never stop. So I'm gonna stop talking if I can and unshare my screen so I can see folks. We'll come back to it later. Let me just ask if there are any questions, any comments that anybody who's online here can make. And if I need to, I can because I can hear the questions for folks on Zoom. I can repeat it also for people who are offline or online. Sorry.
Hi, Jim. I'm monitoring the YouTube channel here.
Okay.
There are lots of activities in the YouTube channel, but I do have a question, and I will use my prerogative of being online with you directly to step in front of other people and ask my question, if you allow me.
Absolutely.
I believe that we were ran over by COVID. We thought that we would be home for a month or 2 months. And in the end, it's been over a year. And so far, we are not sure when we are coming back. And we have an excuse. It's because in our generation, we haven't seen anything like that, worldwide pandemic that put us all home.
Right.
And so as the administrative personnel of the university, Lavinia and I, we as directors of academic affairs, we were trying to quickly put together tools and information that would help us to get through this new experience, this new normal, something that would allow us to make that jump that you put in one of your slides, that you had an arrow with COVID from 100% presence to 100% virtual. So this was done more or less ad hoc. We had great help from people, Edmondo and Carlos Bicholski, which is also in the room with us. They helped us quite much, Jean David as well, and a small group of students also helped us. But I am afraid, and I think that other professors are afraid as well, that we will be run over again when it's all over, because we are quietly and tacitly expecting that we will go back to the way it was before. But things will not be the same, as you mentioned. We can use this as a means to improve and to get closer to students and include this diversity of access to our university courses, and bring people that normally would not be able to attend university because they are home and so on. So my question finally, after this long speech, is how can the administrative personnel, how can I and Lavinia help prepare in advance? Because the way I see now, it will be run over again, because we're more or less quietly expecting that professors would prepare themselves for this new normal, post-COVID new normal. And I think that maybe there are ways of coordinating the efforts and preparing in advance. And that would be, how do you see that? And what hints that you would be able to give us?
So first of all, let me say, well, thanks for the question. It's a great question, and I agree with everything you said about, why. So to me, it's not just coming back and doing the same thing, and a lot of the issues, Marcello, that you just brought up about, improving what instruction looks like, to be able to increase access, right, to UFRJ courses, right? I mean, you folks are a national treasure, right? And so how do you make that kind of an educational experience and opportunity available to more students, the ones who can't actually manage to come to Rio and come to your campus, right? So I would say that challenge existed before COVID, right? But now, we were all forced into starting to learn how to use those kinds of tools and how to adapt our courses to not just to doing face-to-face. So when I talk about flexible learning at UMass, you'll see, we are still a residential campus, but we want to use what we do on campus to reach students who are off campus as well. And so you asked about, what kind of programs could you folks as administrators, you and Lavinia and others as administrators do? What I would say is that it's an opportunity going forward, maybe not so much in advance, but as we go forward, it's an opportunity to help faculty, staff, and students, like your graduate teaching assistants, learn how to, improve the educational experience that's actually mediated online. So I don't know about you and your faculty, but I can tell you our faculty, in the space of 2 weeks, last March in the United States, we went from being fully open to fully closed, right? I mean, it just happened so quickly. I would say maybe 10% of our faculty had experience teaching online, but everybody in the space of 2 weeks had to learn. And so I'll tell you, the results were not, as optimal or as good as they could have been if we'd had more time to prepare, right? And so I think, again, thinking about the future going forward, we do have time to prepare, or we have time to continue to evolve, because this is going to be with us, right? And the opportunities of extending what we do on campus, off campus, that opportunity is going to be with us long term. So in my university, and actually what I'm leading or co-leading in my university, is we are starting a program. Well, it's not actually announced yet, but it will be announced within a couple of weeks, of opportunities for, so for funding and to bring people together, bring faculty, bring staff, bring students together who want to work in teams at the department level. So it's not just individual faculty, but departments saying, hey, we want to take what our department does and move aspects of that online and have off-campus students as well as on-campus students. So we are creating a program that will have some funding in it for faculty, for students, for staff who are part of the educational process. So that talked about those examples, those programming assignments I gave. Those were brand new. I think they were great, right? The students loved them. It was great. It helped build community. Those are the kind of things that I think we can do when we have time to think, rather than just like, oh my God, I've got to give a lecture and it's online. How do I learn Zoom, right? So I think there are ways to be able to plan and to craft a better educational experience. It's going to take time, right? It's not going to happen overnight, and I wouldn't look at it like an on-off thing. I think it's an ongoing process, as you'll see. So I see a question in chat from Edmundo. What resources do you think are essential to, I hope I can read a question here. What resources do I think are essential to start a blended class program that includes online and offline? So, there are the physical resources, right? There's the, there's the access to Zoom. There's, honestly, I put all my stuff up on YouTube. So I didn't, because it's free, all my students can use. My students, were dispersed around the world because they had to leave campus. Many of them who are international went to their home countries. And, YouTube has the content distribution network, the bandwidth to get to a lot of places that UMass can't, right? And so between Zoom, the storage that I used on YouTube, that's all I need in terms of physical resources. The students need that access. I know for a fact that, there are plenty of places in the United States, there are plenty of places in Brazil, there are plenty of places in Europe, Africa, everywhere, where students don't have the high bandwidth access that, so I post my lectures in high definition, students can't see that. So my lectures are free. I know that there are schools that have actually, taken them, put them on flash drives and mailed the flash drives to students, right? And so I do think that it's important to think about how you're going to be able to reach the students who don't have the high bandwidth connectivity that might be needed. There are technology solutions to that, but that's got to be part of the picture, because all students, you want their access to be as common as possible. And then, I just think we have to think about what we do in our classrooms, down to the homeworks we give and the programming assignments that we give. How do we adapt those to build that community among students, some of whom are present and some of whom are offline? So that's developing new curricular material.
Professor Guilherme levantou a mão.
Yeah, Jim, Guilherme has a question, I guess.
Yeah, hey, Jim. Really great, the talk. I really enjoyed that. It's fantastic. Thanks. And it seems that you raised the really important issues that so far is not just because the pandemic moment, but things that we really should act.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the pandemic. It's indeed a really crazy moment, but gave us opportunities to think about the situation and how to improve it. That was for me an amazing thing. And of course, we need to be prepared to have good infrastructure, to have our labs connected and so far, but basically think about the evolution of the educational process and the points that you raised there, that again, they are really nice. So active learning, it's something amazingly good, but active learning depends on cases.
Case?
The cases. Yes, the case.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Could you comment a little bit about how you provide the case from where you get them and how you inspire the students? So, because for instance, for the COVID stuff, that's the case. So we have lots of situations that the students can work on technologies to support, the protection of people regarding COVID. But regularly, how you collect the cases, how you inspire get the case to offer to the students?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I'll tell you all a little secret. So I have, last semester was my first semester back in a university for 6 years, because I went to Washington, D.C., then I moved to France, and now I'm back in the United States. And when I knew I was coming back, and this was before COVID, I said, to my department chair, I said, I want to teach 100% online, right? So I don't, and I didn't know there was going to be COVID. What I wanted to do was, because I've been very interested in this issue of blended learning and how to teach online. And so I will tell you, I'd already thought about those ideas about, programming assignments that brought students together. I didn't lecture. Not one time did I lecture last semester, because the lectures were already up there. So what I did say to students is, well, we're not going to meet twice a week. We're going to meet just once a week. We'll meet once a week a little bit longer than we would have once a week. But, they're going to watch that material online. And so, and I planned for that. And so I always came to class with problems that we could solve as a group, or I'd let them solve them. And then you do a poll. So, you're an instructor, right? And you're teaching, and you think, okay, well, here's a problem, and you assign the problem, you give everybody 5 minutes, play some music in the background while they're trying to solve the problem. You think, everybody's going to get it, right? And only, 75% of the students get it wrong, right? As a teacher, that's great to know, right? Because something hasn't quite clicked there yet. And so I think that online problem solving, the polling, and, having students do something and being able to respond, okay, vote for one of these 6 answers, which one's correct. And they can do that anonymously. So Zoom has this nice anonymous polling, and you could show them what everybody else. So, the students can see my face go like this when I find out that 75% of the students got the answer wrong, right? Yeah. And so those kinds of things, I think, help engage. And it's a very personal thing, right? From one, sure, even one network course to another, it's going to be different. And certainly, if you think of, UFRJ, or I think of UMass as a whole, a history course is very different from a computer science course, is different from a music course, is different from dance. But active learning is something that you can do across the disciplines. It's just very different. We've had faculty groups here, in different departments work on this issue of active learning just within the classroom. So I see our Coppe director has a question. So directors always get to go next.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks. Congrats.
Professor Romildo, por favor.
Thanks, Jim, for this nice talk. I have one question, is related with evaluation. Learn how to guarantee these students are learning. That's something that I agree 100% that it's a nice tool that we are using now to teach using online platforms. But right, one thing that worries me is about how to guarantee their learning. Right, they are really. And the second point is also, as we are an engineer institute, so we have lots of experimental classes as well. We need to, sometimes it's very easy, it's easier to come with the students to the lab and show them things, do experiments, and then make them put hands on. So this is something that is still, of course, the hybrid system can solve it, but anyway, this is something to think. And the other point of my question is related with the student background for online learning. So if we have big disparity from the background the student has, so I see that when you are, okay, you have the books, you have the tutorial, you have everything, but if not all of them will have the same initiative, and also more than that, the same facilities, because they have very different background. In a country like Brazil, that we have socially, we are very different. We have a small part of population that has access to everything, and huge part of population that has no access. I'm not talking just about the machines, but also the environment, the house they have are different. So sometimes they have many people in the same room, kids with different age. So these are some challenges that maybe you can discuss a little bit.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, we could talk for a whole hour on all three of those. But
I'm sorry.
No. I mean, they're all good questions. Honestly, I don't have answers for them, but I can tell you sort of my thinking on those. So let me start with evaluation and our students learning. Right. The normal way we do that is we give them homeworks, we grade their homeworks, we give them exams, we grade their exams. So you can do that online, right? There's concerns about, well, do people cheat? Do students cheat? There are ways, through randomization of questions. So, for my book, I have this site where students can go, right? There's an algorithm called Dijkstra's algorithm that students really need to know, right? Well, you can generate, we have a little program there that can generate an infinite number of instances of the program, and it'll give the students the answers, right? To make sure that they know what they're doing. And if they have to take an exam, we can generate a question that will go on their exam that's randomized also. And so I do think there's, in terms of measuring, examining, grading things, learning management systems, I didn't get a chance to really talk about those, I think are going to be really important tools going forward. In the US, there are a couple of standard ones: Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, which is open source, are three of the most popular ones. Honestly, I had never used an LMS until last semester when I had to. And now I'm a huge fan of them. So now with my textbook, I give out LMS modules to faculty. And let me tell you why I like them. I hate grading, right? There's nothing worse than getting a stack of exams that big that you have to grade, right? You get a stack that big and you say like, oh my God, that's my next 4 days worth of work to go through that, right? Well, LMSs can help with that. And then what it does is it frees you, it frees me, it frees my teaching assistants. They have more time to work directly with students. So I will tell you, we did very little hand grading this semester. Most of it was with LMSs, and that freed up my teaching assistants and me. So our office hours were much more, we had more office hours because we weren't spending so much time grading, spending more time with students. So I would say, this will sound weird, but it's true. I had the best set of office hours I think I've ever had in my 30 years of teaching because, I wasn't grading. I had a lot more time. Students would sometimes just drop in, say, well, I don't have a question. I just thought I'd see how you're doing. And, we'd chat. And I know my TAs with the programming assignments spent a lot more time working with students. So I think learning management systems are going to be an important part of this solution. You talked about labs. I agree with you. There's nothing better than in person, but maybe you can get 90% of it by virtualizing a lab. So I teach a networking lab where we've got racks of routers, and students come in and they plug in the Ethernet cables into different ports in the back of the routers. They run experiments, and that's what they would normally do in person. We've now virtualized those labs, and it's not quite as satisfying as taking a cable out here and plugging it in here and typing something in, standing in front of the racks of routers. But, it's actually probably closer to what people do in real life because people are always working remotely in real life if you're a network manager. And then I think, the last point that you raised, and I think that's the most important about the different backgrounds that students have and the different life circumstances that they have, because we think too much that, it's just this course, right? But students are coming in especially, for national universities, they're coming with different sets of studying skills. Some people, live in, they have very different housing. I had some of my students who, they were clearly at their kitchen table with, their brothers and sisters running around. And then they had other students who lived in, way nicer houses than I live in, right? And they just come with different backgrounds, different skills. So I think you need separate programs to to be dealing with that, and to, these are mostly advising and counseling programs to help students out with that. But great question.
Jim, I believe that you have some slides to go through still.
Well, a conversation is always better than going through slides. Let me just tell you, so I sent copies of my slides to Marcello and others, and so I think they'll be very happy if people could email you. You could just get copies of the PowerPoint slides. Let me just show one or two more slides, and then I'll break, just so that you can see maybe a little bit of what's happening at
Before you move on to the next slides, let me just point out that many of those who are following us on YouTube asked us to let you know that they enjoyed quite much your book throughout their academic career. Some of them said that it was a lifesaver. So I just wanted to let you know.
So isn't that what you love as a faculty member? So, I do. So send me an email. If somebody made that comment in YouTube, send me an email, because there's nothing that makes a professor's life happier than hearing from a student who says, oh, I really, I loved your course, or I love your teaching material. And so when I get emails like that from students, from around the world in particular, it makes my day. So I love to hear from students.
I'll forward them to you.
So thank you. So let me just tell you what is in the rest of the slides, and there's a URL where you can actually pick up even more detailed information about this. So let's see. I'm not sharing my slides yet. There we go. Okay, so at the University of Massachusetts, we have a program called Flexible Learning, and I was going to talk about that in the final third of this talk, but we're really at time, and discussion's always better. And so what I want to say here is just what flexible learning is, right? It's bridging this gap between face-to-face residential learning and completely online. And so the idea is to augment what we do on classes with modalities, to reach students who are not in the classroom. And in that sense, it's additive, right? We are not replacing the traditional UMass face-to-face educational experience with something that's strictly online. We're trying to extend what we do on campus, what we think we do really well on campus, and extend that to learners at a distance. And those learners at a distance could be synchronous. They could be in classes at the same time. They could be doing it asynchronously, like, we post the lectures on YouTube. And we're also trying to extend this to student activity beyond the classroom. So exactly the kinds of student services, for example, that we were just talking about. Okay, so let me say, I'm a professor. I can assign you homework, right? So let me assign you homework, and you can get everything that I was going to say here. There's just a very short white paper that was written by my boss, our Chancellor Subaswamy, about flexible learning at UMass. He kicked off this activity in February of this year. We're wrapping up the planning for it at the end of this month. And so there's the URL, http:// you see it at the bottom right-hand side, umass.edu.
You are not sharing your screen.
Oh, you can't see my screen? Oh.
No, you stopped sharing.
Oh, sorry. Actually, I noticed my video went out also. So let me share my screen again. Try it here.
Perfect. Now it works.
Okay, good. All right.
So these are some of the perks of teaching on.
Side. Pick up this white paper that was written by my chancellor with input from lots of people, including me, on what flexible learning means at the University of Massachusetts, what it means to students. I mean, we've talked about the advantages already earlier in the talk, what it means to faculty, and what it means for us as a university and for the state. Commonwealth is another word for state, for the state of Massachusetts as well, being able to expand the reach. We've talked about that before, right? I mean, UFRJ is it's a state, a national gem, right? Incredibly important. And what this means for how to extend all the excellence that happens at the UFRJ campus in Coppe to students who are off campus. And I think with that, I was just going to go through some aspects of this paper, but we don't have time. We've talked about many of them already, so I think that that's okay. Take a look at that. Feel free to email me. I can provide additional pointers, and hopefully these slides can be made available to folks also who are online. So I think with that, I'm going to stop at least the presentation part. I'm happy to hang around and chat, but I know you've got a long day of activities here, but I'll leave it up to you, Marcello, how you'd like to handle things.
Well, I could pass on some of the questions that were posed on YouTube. For instance, some of those you have already answered because they were more or less in the question that Romildo made on how to evaluate learning, how to evaluate students, how to grade students. If you have lowered your standards for grading students, and if you think that there's any other model beyond Mooc, these massive online courses. And there's another question here regarding remote teaching for medical students. This is probably not directly applicable to Coppe, but I think for professors and for administrative positions that we have at the university, we have to face this at some point.
Yeah. So, great. Well, there was a whole set of questions there. Let me start with have we lowered our standards? So one of the things that we did do, which I think is great, is we said you could take a lot of your courses pass-fail, right? So you don't get an A, a B, a C, D, or an F, right? You just get a pass or you get a fail. And that relieves a lot of stress from students, I think. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, personally, I'm a big fan of that. You know, I told my students, when I was a graduate student, I took a course pass-fail, and I went to the instructor and I said, okay, I'm doing well in your course, but I've got all these other things I need to do. So I don't want to do any more, I don't have time to do any more homeworks. I don't want to take your final exam. Will you pass me? You know, if it was a graded course, you'd probably give me a C or a D, which I'd be happy with, but I'm taking it pass-fail. I've learned a lot. I don't have time for anything more. Will you give me a pass? And she said yes. And I walked out of there, and it was my introductory French course, right? And I speak French, right? So it worked out fine, and it takes a lot of stress off of students. So I wouldn't say that we lowered our standards. I think we've provided more flexibility because we know students don't have the amount of time, and it's just a different experience now. So I don't think we should hold them to that letter graded grading. And so we did that as an institution. I know the students appreciate that as a lot. You brought up the question of Moocs, which are really important. And I'm not a fan of Moocs, right? Because I think a MOOC alone is not what UMass does and not what UFRJ does. Maybe a MOOC is what I've done, where I've just put my lectures online that accompany my book, right? But you know, a MOOC is really, it's very one way. It's push of information out, and you know, that's valuable. But the class is really about that interaction, right? And I think MOOCs and MOOCs at even, you know, MOOCs at scale, except for maybe the very best ones, you know, MOOCs are not, they don't have that contextualization that I talked about earlier for the individual students. They don't have that personalization. It's a push rather than a back and forth. And so what I aspire to do, what we aspire to do at UMass, what I imagine you aspire to do at UFRJ, is something different than MOOCs, right? It's something more personal. It's something more about being in a class with a lot of other people, some on campus, some off campus. And oh, the last one was about medical. So I don't know anything about medicine, but I do know something about nursing and nursing credentials. We have a nursing PhD program. They have an online program in nursing. I talked to one of our trustees at the university here at UMass is a nurse, and you know, so the trustees are the people, you know, they're really high up, right? They sort of basically tell our chancellor what to do. And we were talking about flexible learning, and you know, she said, you know, she's a nurse. She's she was always very doubtful about this, but she's found that it's been very valuable for her profession. So all I will do is that I have it from at least one good source, that there are good ways to do it online. I honestly don't know what they are because it's not my area of expertise, but our nursing program has a very highly regarded online PhD program in nursing, and some program online to support clinical as well. I mean, in a sense, there's no replacement for some of the clinical experience, but some of the education can be put online.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I guess most of the questions we were able to address. I will also say that we have put together, Lavinia and I, a working group in Coppe to try to anticipate and to prepare in advance for the going back to the post-COVID new normal. And Edmundo is part of the group, and he has invited you to act as our advisor or say a foreign attaché or something like this. Well, anyways, so we think that it's very good if we have the opportunity to exchange experiences and learn a little bit from what you've been doing in UMass, and pass on some of the experiences that we have here, things that worked and that haven't worked so well.
Yeah, I've been talking with Edmundo and others about that, and so I'm really looking forward to that. You know, we actually have a long history of collaborating between our institutions. We've done joint courses together. A couple of your faculty were PhD students in my research group. And so, you know, I think we have wonderful ties, and I look to building even more ties between our institutions. And honestly, I look forward to coming down again in person.
Yeah, well, you were invited. So as soon as we are over this period, we'll be very happy to have you here for a cafezinho. And so, and I'm also very happy that you'll be collaborating with us in this effort that we have for trying to prepare the copy for this new adventure that will come after COVID. So I'll also tell those who are in the audience that if maybe some of the questions were not properly addressed, it's my fault, because there are so many comments and questions, and I maybe overlooked some of them. So please email them to me, because we are in touch with Jim, and I'm pretty sure that he'll be happy to address them, even though it will be offline, but I'll pass on his comments to you. And if you think about something different that you would like to ask, or comments that you would like to make, just feel free to email those to us, to Lavinia or myself, and we'll discuss those with Jim. And I'll also let you know that we are aware of this new reality that we are living. And at Coppe, we are trying to prepare and even collaborating with people that have been working with this as well, such as Jim and the work group that they have in UMass addressing that. So I thank you, Jim, very much for your time, for the wonderful presentation that you gave to us. It was a gift. So I'll email to you the comments that those people made on your excellent book. So you'll be very happy to receive them as well. So thank you very much. If you want to say a few words.
Obrigado. And you know, for those of you who are students, if you're still online, I wish you the best in your studies. You're coming to a fabulous university of amazing people on the faculty there. And you know, I wish all of you as Brazilians also just a hopefully swift exit from COVID.